Gentleman's time's expired. The chair will now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, I just want to talk a little bit more about what has been done for embassy personnel security, diplomatic personnel security since then. My understanding is in Benghazi, there were some security improvements that were made. Could you talk about some of those, both prior to the attacks as well as some of the things that perhaps you sort of alluded to with more ventilation in the safe rooms or some of those things?
Yeah. There were a number of security improvements that were made to the facility. Again, there was an emphasis on trying to buttress the outer walls to try to, create a more effective guard entrance. There was an effort to try to make sure that the facility itself was hardened so that it could withstand attacks if that came to pass. It was in a series of decisions made by the security professionals.
I didn't do it.
In November of 2011, our people in Benghazi said they needed to hire additional local guards. Money was approved that day. In December of that year, they asked for money to buy jersey barriers. The funds were sent by the end of the week. In January of 2012, the RSO, meaning a regional security officer, requested that all personnel deploying to Tripoli and Benghazi for more than 30 days complete the specialized foreign affairs counter-threat training course, which was soon implemented. Also in January 2012, they asked for money for sandbags, security lights, steel door upgrades, drop-arm reinforced car barriers. That was promptly sent. Later that month, they were sent extra helmets, bulletproof vests, and a WMD response equipment. In February of 2012, they requested support for a major renovation of the walls surrounding the complex, including making the walls higher, adding concertina wire, laying barbed wire. That project was completed. In March 2012, they asked to construct 2 extra guard positions. That was completed. In April 2012, they needed help from experts in technical security, and by May, a special team visited to enhance security equipment and security lighting. In June 2012, following the IED incident,
obviously it was not enough.
Immediately, a regional team was sent to enhance the perimeter, and additional funding was approved for more guards.
Obviously it was not enough.
In July 2012, they said that they needed a minimum of 3 American security officers in Benghazi. From then on through July, August, and September, they always had 3, 4, or 5.
Obviously it was not enough.
American DS agents overseeing the expanded contingent of Libyan guards on site. Those are just some of the requests and the affirmative responses, Congresswoman, that were provided.
Obviously it was not enough.
Specifically for Benghazi.
Thank you. Well, we know that short of putting people in bunkers and never allowing them outside of embassy compounds, and we're going to have some sort of a threat to our diplomatic personnel security. Obviously it was not enough. What I'd like to know is, in light of that, what efforts have been put into to provide for contingency operations, especially for known potentially volatile periods in the calendar year. September 11th comes through every year. 2016, September 11th is probably going to be an especially volatile time period. So can you talk a little bit about what you have done or what you put into place and any difficulties you may have come across in coordinating with DOD, the intelligence agencies, other across the government? Is there a move? I know this is not a secure room, so we can't talk about things that are rated secret, but September 11th is coming. Prior to that week, are we moving aircraft carriers nearby? Are we putting an air wing on a 6-hour leash with 1 lift of aircraft on a 2-hour leash? What are we doing? Do we have fast teams and fest teams gearing up, ready to go? What is going on in light of the lessons learned at Benghazi? And what did you personally directed to take charge to happen, especially at your level of interagency cooperation?
It's an excellent question, and it's really at the heart of what I hope will come out of this and the prior investigations.
After more than 100 witness interviews, including more than 80 with witnesses no other committee of Congress talked to.
In December of 2014, Assistant Secretary Starr from the State Department testified before the Select Committee that 25 of the 29 recommendations made by the ARB had been completed. And a September 2013 Inspector General's report noted that the ARB recommendations were made in a way that was quickly taken seriously, and that I took charge directly of oversight for the implementation process. Here's some examples. More diplomatic security and DoD personnel are on the ground at our facilities today. We have increased the skills and competency for our diplomatic security agents by increasing the training time in the high threat course. We've expanded the Foreign Affairs Counter Threat course so that the skills are shared by not just the diplomatic security agents, but people like Chris Stevens and Sean Smith as well.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough.
We've also been working hard to up the interagency cooperation. The interagency security teams that you asked about earlier, Congresswoman, that's a continuing commitment that we are working on.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough.
And I know because of this terrible tragedy, DoD is much more focused on what needs to be thought through with respect to planning and reaction. We had problems in the past with the pastor from Florida, Terry Jones, inciting riots and protests that resulted in the deaths of people, including UN and others who were stationed in Afghanistan. And so we're trying to stay in very close touch between the State Department and DoD.
I didn't do it.
In that case, Secretary Gates actually called him and asked him, please, not to get involved in what he was doing because it was dangerous to our troops and our civilians. Unfortunately, he has a mind apparently of his own. So we are trying to have a closer, coordinated planning and response effort. With respect to your specific questions that are really within the purview of the Department of Defense, like the
I didn't do it.
Deployment of certain Navy vessels, air wings and the like, I think that DoD is trying hard to think about how, particularly in North Africa and the Middle East, they can respond. Because, one of the claims that was made that was proven to be untrue was that DoD withheld sending air support. And indeed, the closest air support that would have been in any way relevant was too far away.
Washington had access to real-time information, but that real-time information did not inform and instruct the decisions made in Washington. After Secretary Panetta ordered assets deployed to help our men, the White House convened a 2-hour meeting. Because at the time those 2 Americans were killed, not a single wheel of a single U.S. military asset had even turned toward Libya.
They're trying to think about how they better deploy and station various assets so that they can have a quicker response time. I've not been involved intimately in this now for, 2 years, I guess more than 2 years. So I can't speak directly, but I know that this was part of the important work that was underway when I left.
You spoke about thank you. You spoke about you making personal phone calls to ask for help from the heads of local government. And you spoke a lot about the power of the chief of the mission, the trust that you put into these professionals that are there. So when an embassy comes under attack, especially after this Benghazi attack, from this time forward, do ambassadors, do they need to call you to ask for help from other agencies of U.S. government, or do they have the ability, if there's a DOD, if there is a CIA or DOD force nearby, a Marine fast team, for example, does the ambassador have to come through security, or do they need to call you to have you call for that? How does that work?
No, and there's an example out of the Benghazi attack. There was a pre-existing understanding between the diplomatic compound and the CIA annex. And
I didn't do it.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough.
And there was no need for anybody at the compound to call Washington to alert the CIA annex. They immediately contacted the CIA annex, and they sprang into action.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough.
To try to come to the assistance of our team at the compound. So we're trying to have more pre-existing arrangements like that, and that goes to your question. If there are assets in the region, how do we plan for contingencies so that they can be immediately triggered and try to respond? Premises that were vulnerable and threatened, of course they came to me. I had to make the decision. I obviously spoke to the White House, I spoke to General Petraeus, I spoke to lots of other people that evening trying to get whatever help we could get. We did get a surveillance plane above the location, but it took some time to get there. It had to be diverted.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough. I'm sorry, it was an unarmed drone, correct?
Yes, it was unarmed. It was on our UAV, an unarmed
UAV.
Yeah, UAV, right. So we asked for everything we could get, and everybody immediately tried to provide it. But I think now there's more.
I mean, obviously, it was not enough.
Awareness that maybe we should be doing these scenarios ahead of time to try to figure out what could be done without having to, reinvent it every time.
Thank you. I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman.